Welcome, everyone. This is the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District Board meeting of Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you all for being here today. It is at 3:01 p.m. and I'd like to call us to order. And first off, I would like to acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District operates on the traditional territories of the Squamish and the Sechelt First Nations, and we're very grateful to be here. We have an agenda in front of us today, and before we move to adopt this agenda, I'm just going to look to staff and directors and our presenters to see if there's anything else that does need to be added to today. Not seeing anything at this time. So may I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, please? So move Director Seegers, seconded Director Ties. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. First up is Annex A, pages 1 to 2 of our package, and it's the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District Board meeting minutes of July 23rd, 2020. Before we have a motion to receive and adopt, are there any errors, omissions, additions, subtractions, deletions, divisions that need to be done to this document? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to receive and adopt the meeting minutes of July 23rd, please. So moved Director Seegers, seconded Director Kroll. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Looking to directors and looking to staff? Not seeing anything. The next up on our agenda is our petitions and delegations. And before we move into our petitions and delegations, I'm just going to ask for a motion to receive all of the documents, Annex B, C, and D of our package, please. So move Director Seegers, seconded Director Kroll. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. So first up, the Vancouver Coastal Health updates, and we will, Johan, I have you first on our speakers list. If you'd like to go ahead and queue up your presentation or start with your verbal, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I do not have... Does everybody have the presentation, or are you able to display it from your end?
Tara, are you able to display it from, or Tina?
I'm not able to, unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you. Then it's package, so I'm just going to go straight to the third page of the presentation. The objective is really to provide you with an update with regards to our routine capital investment allocation for 2021 that we have received and subsequently allocated to various projects across the health authority. And that includes facilities and major clinical equipment. And then secondly, I just want to address a cost share request for a number of projects to your board. I'm going to skip over the content page and looking at page 5, that is the summary as we have received it from the Ministry of Health for our routine capital investment allocation. It's a multi-year distribution. So they are giving us this current fiscal 2021 and then 3 years out for planning purposes. We are able to allocate all of what is available within 2021, 50% of the 2 outer years and 75% of the next fiscal. Over to the next page is the facilities projects, which is broken down. To the left, you'll see clinical renovations, new clinical builds, and long-term care. That is the category that we are looking at. This is based on ongoing projects for the coastal COC at the moment, and also includes any of the upcoming projects. Over to the next page, which is the facilities infrastructure component. And you'll notice that I have highlighted the projects which is specific to Seashell, and also the ones which I'll be addressing for the cost share with you. There is one of the projects on here, which is item number 18 on the list. That is a high voltage feeder for Seashell Hospital. That is within our plan at the moment, but I think having had discussions with facilities specific to that project, we are not sure as to exactly when we will proceed with it. So I have not included that within the cost share request that's coming up. It may be coming forth at a later point, maybe as late as January. If that's the case, I will definitely let the staff know in advance that we are planning to do that. On the next slide, for the major clinical equipment, we have approved the following projects for the Coastal COC. That's a radiology fluoroscopy unit for Powell River General Hospital at 1.8 million. Almost the same unit for Squamish General Hospital at 1.8, and CR to DR upgrade for Bella Coola for a total of 3.6 million out of a 14 million allocation across VCH. So that is a reasonable share of the pie that went to the Coastal COC. Then talking about the 10-year plan, I think the last time we met, we did highlight in the slide, I just kept it in for the sake of consistency. This is what we talked about the last time or shared with you, the various residential care or long-term care facility projects that's underway or will be underway fairly shortly within Vancouver Coastal. In our submission for the 10-year capital plan, which was in September of this year, we have again restated the very same projects that we did in the last fiscal. Firstly, the surgical services at 20 million, the repurposing of Totem Lodge, and the redevelopment of Shawncliffe. Those are the three that sits in our capital plan. Just for the sake of the committee, we have had some further discussions around the surgical services with the Ministry of Health. And by that, I mean, I am hopeful that that will be the one that will be chosen for the capital plan, for the 10-year capital plan at this point, which is really very, very good. Very excited about that. The next two slides just break it down between the plan to expand and improve that. And then there's the repurposing of Totem Lodge and Shawncliffe once again. Any questions on the 10-year plan specifically?
Directors, I see Director Seegers.
Thank you. So you're talking about a 10-year plan. So I know in the District of Seashell, Regional District, we do 5-year capital plans, and we lay out what the expenditures are going to be over that, that time frame. So if it's in the 10-year plan, that means within the next 10 years, it could potentially move forward, or would it be like where does it show up in that 10-year plan?
Right, so that is a piece that we as a health authority do not have a tremendous amount of visibility into. This is the Ministry of Health's 10-year plan that they discuss with the Ministry of Finance and then get the blessing at Treasury Board level for that plan. We do not get the feedback back as to within which year it sits, whether it's year 2, 3, 4, or 10. Essentially, I think the 10-year window is to address cash flow for very large redevelopment projects, such as, in our case, the Richmond Hospital or the St. Paul's Hospital. That is where the 10-year window really comes in. It's more of a cash flow because we're doing this on an annual basis at this point.
So once they've actually made a decision about that, do they come back and say, well, it's going to be in year 3 or it's going to be in year 5?
They do not.
They do not.
No. The only indication that we get is when we actually are having more conversations around any of the specific projects, and that is giving us huge hope that something will be within the plan. And with that, I'm referring to the surgical suite.
Okay, so I guess that comes back to us and our strategic plan when we talk about advocacy. So as a regional board and as local governments here on the Sunshine Coast, what could we do around advocating for the projects that we're looking at having done here?
I think you can definitely benefit from your local politicians making a case to Victoria. Definitely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Director Seegers. Next up, I have Director Hiltz, please.
This is my naive question. Election is Saturday. How does that and the 10-year capital plan? I'm not sure. Yeah, the intersection between those events.
Yes, I mean, anything capital at this point, as you probably know, at provincial level is kind of like on hold because no announcements, no major contracts have been awarded, etc. Not that we have stopped any work, but we are kind of a little bit delayed by a couple of weeks in terms of our tendering process, etc. Over the years, I think when we transitioned from the previous government into the NDP as we have it now, we did not really see much of a change in our 10-year plan. That, I think, is inherent of speaking and addressing the need rather than a political window that you put over it.
That answers your question, Director Hiltz, as best it can.
Yeah, the 10-year plan kind of transcends terms, I think is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. I don't think if we are going to have a different government next week that will have a drastic impact on the plan as such. That's what I'm saying.
Director Kroll, I had noticed that you had your hand up, but you've put it down. Would you still like to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair Pratt. I think the question was answered. I was just concerned at how these plans might be impacted by change in government, change in ministers, and I think Mayor Seegers sort of touched on it. Whoever's in power, we just need to establish communication lines and advocate on behalf of the coast.
And it's a unique situation when you are a local government entity as an elected versus dealing with a provincial ministry getting the majority of your funding. And I know this from my history of being a school board trustee, is when you're sitting there with your hands out for all of your capital and your operating and everything else. It's a much different situation than what we are in local government, where we have a little more autonomy in the decisions that we make around our budgeting. And I don't know, it does makes it a little bit more difficult with and it makes the advocacy that piece that much more important. So we're certainly happy to do that. Team Sunshine Coast approach.
I mean, certainly we have had some pressures in terms of COVID on capital. I did not include that in this presentation, but just to give you an overview of that. We have essentially procured a tremendous amount of equipment across the health authority. respirators, etc. We have procured additional equipment for the laboratories to accommodate testing. There are various testing sites that's been set up across the Lower Mainland and within the communities as well, in the rural communities. Those all need capital dollars to function. Then we have had smaller pieces of actually increasing our bed stock, the actual beds. That was a substantial piece of the ask. And to date, we have received funding for equipment excluding laboratories. We have not received any additional funding for any of the facilities work that we have done, and we are hopeful, according to the communication that we've received from the ministry, that we will be funded for the laboratory equipment. Interestingly, at VGH, we have what is called a PPE lab that's been set up to test the equipment. We are also planning to have this unit a little bit of a commercial expansion, because the ability within the Lower Mainland is very limited. So it's an opportunity for us to do that and actually test some of the equipment of vendors and potential people developing various levels and materials with PPE. That we're looking at as a little bit of a commercial venture, as a spin-off. We are intended to actually charge people to do that testing. But the equipment associated with that, we are looking for a separate funding envelope coming from the ministry specific to COVID.
Thank you, Johan. Any further questions? Johan, any further?
Yes, then I just want to go over to the cost share, which is the last slide within the deck. When we presented last fiscal, we had a project to replace the master control center, transfer switches, and emergency power generator. We are coming to you and asking for an additional funding contribution of $28,800. The total increase in the projected project cost is $72,000. The reason for that, as you can see, is that there's an outline on the right-hand side. It is actually not a cost increase, a better solution, according to the engineers, to go with one unit versus the 2 units that we were planning for when we initiated this project. So that is the one ask. We are secondly looking to replace the heat exchangers for the domestic hot water in the south wing. That's got a total project cost of about $100,000. And then the last item, which I think we have discussed at various levels throughout the redevelopment and the build of the new tower, is actually the replacement of the windows within Sechelt Hospital. That has got a price tag of $600,000, and we are asking for a cost share on that. And the total ask today to you is $308,800 in total. I know that when we were talking about the window replacements in the past, and this is probably going about 8 years back, the cost was substantially lower than what it is today, unfortunately. But I'm open for any questions around the cost share request.
Directors? Director Hiltz, please.
Thank you. In terms of the climate change aspect and energy efficiency and the generator, the fuel type that is that have a climate change aspect to it? Like, what is the fuel type? Diesel, natural gas, or is there other options?
I believe there is. I mean, we are working very closely with our energy sustainable group on any of these projects. We have a very, very strong group of expertise that's been built within Vancouver Coastal Health, and actually that we are also sharing across the Lower Mainland. And yes, we have their involvement in each one of these projects to ensure that we absolutely maximize and move forward with a better solution than what we have in place.
Thank you. Directors, I'm not seeing any other hands for questions. Either waving madly at me or electronically. Director Hiltz?
Yes. Procurement, in terms of like windows, do local contractors, it's a big project, right? So the procurement for this, in terms of like, we've been talking about social procurement in terms of the regional district, and does that factor into these decisions about the tendering, or how does the tendering work? Like, do local contractors stand a chance in any of this?
They stand a chance, absolutely, sir. I mean, it's an open process, and yes, by all means. Yep. It's not like we are going to be forcing anybody from the Lower Mainland on you. Absolutely not. But pricing will dictate who gets awarded the tender.
And the tenders come through BC bid. Is that how?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And
Director?
they'll probably be coming up fairly soon. Once we've settled on the election.
Director McMahon, I saw your hand go up, but it went back down. Did you have any?
Director Hiltz got to me first. I was going to ask about BC bid.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up from directors. Johan?
No, I just want to say we will not be initiating any of these projects until we actually have confirmation from you on the Cochair contribution.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Johan. Appreciate having you join us today, although
Thank you.
from afar. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. With that, the next up on our agenda, our second delegation, is Jerry Latham, the Director of the Sunshine Coast, regarding the Seashell Hospital minor capital equipment. Jerry, over to you.
Thank you very much. Does everyone have the presentation? Okay.
We do.
It's something that you've seen before. So in July, I came with, again, just an update of where we were at. And because of the COVID situation from March till June, we hadn't achieved much as far as ordering or receiving. So now what you'll see is an updated list. We have, I think, advanced quite a bit since July. The majority has been ordered or completed. I know Tina's just starting to receive some of the invoices. The in progress is either trialing or receiving quotes. So that's where those items are at the moment. Of course, I'd like to say we'll have this all into you before the end of the year, but that's not necessarily something that I can guarantee. Even those items that are ordered, the delivery time now across the world has slowed down with all of our supply chains, but it will get here as soon as it gets here, I guess. And then on the fifth slide, I've just done the recalculation, trying to spend the dollars that have been in reserve for us, and then adding what is coming in the next year for a new total for 2021 of $286,000. So I am happy to take questions.
Okay, over to directors. Director Hiltz.
The supply chain issues, is that manufacturing or transportation or install? What aspects of the supply chain are being delayed?
I think it's all of the above. A lot of factories were impacted and are still being impacted by the pandemic. And transportation is definitely an issue right now for us as well. So it's just the world has slowed down. And there's a high demand for some of the items. I think in July indicated that our ventilators we probably would not see until January of 2021. And that timeline has not changed for us.
Thank you. Directors, any other questions? I have Director Toth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick one, sort of looking longer ahead, the next 2 or 3 years as reserves build back up. What do you suppose the next batch of minor capital equipment that'll be coming forward might look like?
Well, I want to speak to what Johan spoke to a few minutes ago. If we were, for example, to get a green light on the surgical renewal, then there would be a lot of equipment at that point in time coming from upgrading the operating rooms. So that's certainly sitting there. The endoscopy suite, we have that equipment on the list right now. So the renovation would happen, but we'll hopefully have the equipment in place before we even renovate it, because we do need that now.
Okay.
But the tower itself was completed in 2013, and we always said at that point in time, we replaced 100% of everything in the tower, and that we would look 10 years down the road and expect at that time to be really hit with replacement needs.
Okay. Next up, I have Director Seegers and then Director Kroll.
So I have a question about operating funds. So if Director Kroll is looking at capital, I'd like to see, nope, not, he's shaking his head, okay. So I'm really pleased with what's happening on the capital side, both major and minor capital. I know you're really advocating for us here on the Sunshine Coast. I guess I know that our chair and vice chair attend the hospital district meetings. Is it at those meetings that you talk about the operating, like where you're going with operating? And where I'm coming from is, I know that one of the huge issues that we're seeing, not only on the Sunshine Coast, but throughout BC and Canada probably, is around mental health, right? And we have had conversations as Team Sunshine Coast with the Minister for Mental Health and Addictions, who we don't know if she'll be back, but and also with Ministry of Health around support for mental health. So I'm wondering how we as well address those kinds of things. So I know that while our liaisons to your board are going to that, I don't know how that information is being disseminated more widely, and what we can do to assist in getting you the supports that you need for those initiatives.
Good question. Well, let's talk about the capital around that. That's the mental health substance use facility, which Johan spoke to. It's hidden a little bit because it's underneath the totem repurposing. And that is a planned facility for all services for mental health and substance use, which will allow us to move our current staff out of the trailers, give them a much more expanded working environment for outpatients and outreach. But it would also mean integrating our inpatient unit into that facility and also expanding the beds for that, for inpatient. There would be some level of detox capability in that building. So services and programs would get a lift. There's no doubt about that. So that is in the planning stages right now. We're just doing a Class C costing and the business case that will go up through the board to the ministry. But it is sitting on the 10-year capital. Now the local operating budget, I mean, you meet with our VP, Karen Olson. That's where I would start. That's my year. And that's where Shannon McCarthy, who is the Director of Mental Health and Substance Use, takes requests around enhancing our operating capability, whether it's staffing, services, or programs. It's a struggle. It's one program that you see the impact in the community on a day-to-day basis, whereas some of the other programs aren't quite as visible to our community as mental health and substance use is. So anything that you can do actually in those conversations to highlight the need. I believe we're doing it from an operational director level. And Karen's aware. Karen is well aware. And she takes that up through to the senior executive and at the board level for VCH.
Okay, tied into that, do you also have, do you liaise with the First Nations Health Authority?
Yes.
Because one of the conversations that I've had with Director Paul is around potentially accessing funding through that stream for a detox facility, detox and addictions facility. And
so
he said money is available.
Yeah, so my relationship with First Nations Health Authority right now is in partnership with Sechelt Nation around COVID. I mean, I do a weekly teleconference with the FNHA. But so I have not had conversations with them around the mental health and substance use need. I would ask that of Shiloh Joe as to whether she has. But, you know, one of the legacies, and we were just talking about this today, that's come out of the COVID is our relationship with our First Nations across the province and the partnerships that have formed. And I anticipate and hope that this just grows beyond this pandemic so that we're working in close step with each other around health needs in our communities. So I quite agree.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Next up, I have Director Kroll, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. We've been sort of talking about the nuts and bolts of capital expenditures, but are you able to give us a snapshot of the human component of the healthcare system? The 7 o'clock parades and banging of pots seems to have passed, but I'm quite sure the strain on the human resources of the system are still being taxed, and now we're hearing of potential second wave. So are you able to give us a bit of a snapshot on just the resilience of the human capacity of the system?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And I guess Dr. Henry called it a second wave yesterday, saying that we're in the second wave. And I think the numbers yesterday reflected Thanksgiving weekend. Unfortunately, we were waiting for that to start. And we saw the numbers go up here in BC. I haven't seen the numbers for today. So we're challenged. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We are challenged, but we're challenged with the same vacancies we had before the pandemic here on the coast. And with that, we're challenged right now with sick time. Because of COVID, we're being extremely cautious as staff and leaders of healthcare to ensure that we do not have COVID when we enter the building. So if we feel a tad bit unwell and our symptoms match that of COVID, we do not come to work and we get tested. And it takes about 24 to 36 hours to get those results. So that means we're off work until we get those results back. So we're seeing that effect every day here right now. So that's impacting our staffing. And when we have a vacancy due to illness, I can sometimes fill it and sometimes I can't fill it. Sometimes I'm filling it at straight time. Sometimes I'm filling it at overtime, which means then I'm working my other staff even harder than normal. We do have a human resources workforce plan for if we ever get into a surge, meaning that we get to a height of overcapacity with COVID, and I'm working with the physicians on that as well. So the system is tired. I don't think you'll ask anyone in the system, physician, leadership, or frontline. We're all tired. But we recognize the sprint that we did from March to April is not a sprint anymore. We're in what we're calling the marathon. That's our language. And I think the other challenge for us is in the spring, we shut down a lot of services and we focused just on the pandemic. That's not what we're doing right now. We're running the services and then we're layering the COVID on top of that. And so it's trying to manage those two items and continue to be as diligent as we can. So thank you for asking. We're okay. We're okay. But you can't not realize that there is exhaustion in the system.
Thank you.
Director Seegers?
Thank you. Around staffing, I know that one of the areas that had been indicated was a contributing factor to not getting staff was housing.
Yes.
Is that still an issue?
It is, but not as much as it was. So it is. But what I'm finding, and maybe you can see if my assumption is correct, I'm feeling that there's some Airbnbs that are slipping over into longer term rentals. Mm-hmm. That's helping us. And the other thing that's helping us at the moment, not necessarily with housing, is Alberta's decisions. We have recruited in the last month a number of Albertans who are leaving the province and leaving their healthcare system. Mm-hmm. And also, I think what's helping us from a recruitment perspective is we're seeing Lower Mainland healthcare folks choosing to leave the Lower Mainland and to come to what they are seeing as potentially, I'm going to say a safer, but a different place to live during all of this. And with the ability to remotely work from home, it's working. So, and I'm going to say we just hired a couple from Fort St. John, husband and wife, healthcare workers. So there's a number of recruiting that's going on at the moment. But it doesn't seem to me, I get a couple of requests every once in a while for assistance, but not as much as I was getting in the late fall and early winter.
Right. My sister's a nurse in Alberta, so I understand what's happening up there.
Yeah.
Going forward, I know you do this really well. Leverage us as you need us, for those areas, like housing or whatever it is outside of your area that we can assist you with.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, we recognize that, the importance of you people being staffed up.
Yeah, and thank you for also your introduction that you did for me a few weeks ago. In COVID, we're looking for self-isolation for some of our marginalized, more vulnerable population, and I think that's going to work out. We're still in conversation with the individual. So the RAC, thank you to the District of Sechelt, so the Respiratory Assessment Clinic is, we did 60 to 70 every day last week.
Wow.
Testing, but that's also a symptom of the fact that we're entering into flu season and kids are back to school. We're able to provide the saline gargle test. I tell anyone that's a parent or a grandparent of little ones, we're doing this test for 4 to 18 age, but the 4 to 6 years olds are struggling. So the more you can practice at home before they get sick, just put a little bit of salt and water in a glass and teach them how to swish and gargle. They'll be more successful when they have to be tested. And trust me, they'll have to be tested a number of times throughout the winter months. Because if they fail the first time, then it does become a nasal swab, which is not anywhere near as pleasant. But the RAC is providing a tremendous service to this community. And we received funding finally 2 weeks ago from the ministry to support that. And we have capacity to go up to 125 a day if we have to. We hope we don't have to, but right now we tipped between 60 and 70. And we'll move it inside for the winter. So the testing will be done in the winter. We're just going to build another cubicle inside.
Yeah, the nasal swab is not fun.
No, I had to have it 3 times. Not fun. not fun.
No. I'm not seeing any other directors with their hands up at this point.
Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your help.
It's our pleasure, Jerry. This is what we're here for, and it just pass on our gratitude to I mean, our healthcare workers are all frontline, and it's I know it's quite difficult for them. It's not just physically demanding work; it can be very emotionally demanding. So it's
Appreciate that.
yeah, it's a tough. It's not an easy time. So
Yeah.
and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we've got a ways through this. Yeah.
We're not sprinting anymore.
Yeah, and the note is 200, Director Toth posted 274 new cases in the last 24 hours for BC.
That's what we were afraid of after the long weekend, Thanksgiving.
Okay. All right, so moving along, thank you both Johan and Jerry for your presentations. And the next step, our report from our General Manager, Corporate Services, Chief Financial Officer on the 2021 provisional budget, which we have already received this. So I will pass it over to our CFO, please.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. So before I maybe head into the report, I just wanted to check in and see whether or not, based on the cost funding request from Vancouver Coastal Health, if the board wanted to make any motions or now, or did we want to approach that after the provisional budget's reviewed?
That is a good question. Directors, do you have any preference at this time, or do you want to proceed with the provisional budget and revisit the other requests later? Dr. Seekers?
I guess the question I'd have around that is, how do those numbers fit into the provisional budget? So I'd probably rather see the budget first so that you can relay to us how we would address those in there.
Okay, yeah,
Yep.
we can. Staff have provided a little bit of wording for a motion, and typically what happens from a procedural perspective is depending on the timing of the request, the provisional budget's required to be adopted prior to December 31st. And so if there was any desire to have a report prior to the end of the year or as part of the budget deliberation or the final budget for the hospital, in hearing that there might be an additional request in January, staff would just bring a report for options on how to fund the funding request. So typically what happens is the provisional budget gets adopted, and then we would incorporate in any additional funding request at a subsequent meeting. So no impact to this particular provisional budget, I guess the answer. So I'll just highlight a few things here. It's a lengthy and detailed report, and so essentially there's not much of a significant change in regards to the provisional in the prior year. We are seeing some positive gains towards the minor capital, which is fantastic news. We had a carry forward amount of over 1.12 million in last year. We're budgeting again an additional 240,000. So just depending on what our balance remains for the end of the year, we could have anywhere of up to 1.3 million that's accumulated for minor equipment. Our major capital equipment too is reflected in the budget, and those are based on past major cost share requests. And so we have an additional one of over 300,000, which is not included in the budget. We also have provided some summary of what our existing capital reserve accounts are, the uncommitted balances. So some years ago, we have in these presentations get a good outlook, a 5-10 year horizon. So there was a change towards increasing contribution to reserves to be able to fund some of these future needs. So we're in a position of some uncommitted amounts of 1.4 million in our minor equipment, and major equipment we have about 1.2 million dollars there. As far as repayment of debt, this is just a continuation for the major project for the renovation and expansion. And so otherwise, from a taxation perspective, we're not seeing much of a change from the prior year, and that's just to reflect some of the administrative costs based on the full cost, and the 28,000 from last year for administrative costs because we had quite a surplus from last year, so we might realize that for this year. So happy to take any questions the board may have on the provisional budget.
Okay. I'm going to look to the directors. I had seen that Director Seegers and Director Kroll had their hands up previously, so I'll start with Director Seegers, please.
Thank you. So there is a potential request for 308,800 for major capital. And then there's available for 2021 for minor capital of 286,671 based on the budget that's on here. Are you saying that in this provisional budget, those are not anticipated at this point? And what would happen if we did approve the major capital? How would that affect this provisional budget?
So the 286 that's reflected as part of the minor capital presentation from Jerry that's actually a carry forward amount. That's actually already included in our budget. That's part of that 1.12 million that's been carried forward from prior years. So no decisions to be made there. And the additional 240 in 2021 would actually add to that amount. So they'd actually have that amount plus 240. So as far as the major equipment goes, no, that's not included in this particular one. We'd have to amend the provisional budget. But again, I'm not sure if there's a need to amend the provisional budget because essentially we have to adopt our final budget in March. So we would typically just include those in our final. If there is a desire or a timeliness that's required, and I guess I would check with VCH staff, as I did hear there might be some timeliness, is some of these things might not be procured until there's commitment from the SCRHD. So that would be the only check-in point, I think, from staff's perspective.
Okay. Director Seegers, does that answer your question? You're muted.
Need to hear from VCH then around that. Do you need a commitment from us in order to move these forward?
Okay.
It would be greatly appreciated if we can have a commitment as soon as possible. If today is possible, that would be great, because that will allow us to move these projects, move them ahead faster. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. I've got Director Kroll and then Director McMahon.
Thank you, Chair Pratt. I think just in the last bits of conversation, my question has been sort of answered. And it, in fact, is there a decision that made today could impact on the hospital funding, their activity that's currently scheduled being impacted? So I think Johan just answered that, time is of the essence.
I think I may just add to that internally our internal process took a little bit longer than what it usually should due to it's COVID, and then secondly we have a brand new CFO that joined us in the midst of COVID on April 1st or April 2nd. We also have an interim CEO at the moment. So all of these things had an impact and caused a little bit of a delay. And at the end of the day, we still have a target that we need to meet. So we want to get going on these. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Over to Director McMahon, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion if somebody will tell me what I'm moving.
Over to our CFO, please.
Is the desire to include the cost share request for the additional funds for all three projects as part of the provisional budget? Okay, and then subsequent to that, we would have to then include the source of funding, which would be through the reserves. So I could, I know Tara had something crafted based on providing a report, but maybe I could try to provide different wording, which would be that the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District approve funding in the amount of 0.0309 million cost share for the following: additional funds required for the motor control center transfer switch and emergency power generator project with a new cost estimate of 1.602, replacing heat exchangers for domestic hot water with a cost share estimate of 1 million, and window replacement for Seashell Hospital with cost share of 60,000, and that the following cost share request be funded through reserves, and that the provisional budget be amended accordingly. And then the subsequent motion above would be that the provisional budget be adopted as amended.
And Director McMahon, that's the motion that you wanted to.
I'm just gonna in the email that you sent earlier. The second item was 0.1 million. So is it 1 million or 0.1?
It's 100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
That sounds better.
Yeah, and then the emergency power generator, I hear is our funding share is 29,000.
What she said.
Okay. And I'm assuming, Tara, you have that? Okay. Director Seegers, are you seconding that motion?
I'll second it as long as we ensure that the numbers reflect what's in here. I was hearing two different categories. One is the estimate of the cost, and the other is the request to us. And I saw different numbers coming forward. So just as long as we have all of the numbers from one category, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Would you like Tara to read that back then? I'm seeing a yes. So Tara, when you're ready, if you could read that back, please.
Thank you, Chair. So what I understood Director Seeger's comment was that in the cost share portion, each of the additional listings of the equipment would have the cost share portion as well. Is that correct?
It could have the cost share portion, or if it doesn't have so, I mean, one of the comments that Tina made was, 29,000. Well, that's our portion. It's not the cost of the actual project. So either the motion should indicate the cost of the project and that our share is 40% of that, or indicate what our portion is. And not a mix, right? So it's just clear. They're all either one or the other, or both, whatever.
So it's explicit within the motion.
Okay, let me try and come back to you. That the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District Board approve 40% funding of 0.0309 million cost share for the following: additional funds required for motor control center of a total project cost estimate of 1.602 million, replacing heat exchangers for a total cost estimate, project cost estimate of 0.100 million, and replace window replacements at Seashell Hospital with a total project cost estimate of 0.600 million, and that the cost share request be funded through reserves, and further that the provisional budget be adjusted accordingly.
Be adjusted or be adopted as amended. Which is the better wording? That it be adjusted or be adopted as amended.
Sorry, Chair, I'll have to ask Tina which she would prefer as the separate motion for the adoption or include it as part of.
I think based on the presentation, and again, this is sometimes why we like to cook it ahead of time, so apologies for just bearing through here. So essentially, I think the slide presentation on the presentation is what we should include. So in addition to the 1.602, maybe just in brackets, do the cost share request based on slide or page 16 of agenda or slide 14. Maybe just in brackets, just like they've provided, I think would add some clarification. And maybe I think that's what we were trying to strive to.
Okay. Is everyone clear on that? Okay, any further discussion on this? Tara, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't hear the CFO say that she would like the provisional budget adjusted in this or approved as amended in this directive recommendation.
Yes, we'll have to have approval for that this be included in the provisional budget and that the provisional budget be adopted as amended.
And Tara, that answers your question, no? Okay. Okay, CFO, are we missing anything else with that, or does that make it clear?
Hopefully it's clear to the board, so I'm good on my end.
Okay, I'm seeing nods and everybody's clear on that? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. Are there any other questions regarding the 2021 provisional budget as amended or the report that our CFO has provided for us? I'm not seeing any hands up or any other. Nobody's dancing around, waving at me. So, CFO, is there anything else that you'd like to present at this time, or?
Well, thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, with that, we have no communications. We have no motions. We have no bylaws. We have no new business. We're not going in camera. So the next step is to adjourn. So just hang on, Donna. Before we adjourn, I'd just like to go to Johan or Jerry and just ask if you have any other words that you'd like to say before we adjourn. Johan?
I just want to say thank you very much for your support. Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. And Jerry?
Exactly for me as well. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you so much. Anything else from the board? Okay. Director McMahon, I saw your hand first, so would you like to make a motion to adjourn? Thank you. And a seconder, please. Director Seekers. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. We do have an attendee in the audience. Sophie, if you would like to ask a question, can you please raise your hand? Oh, there we go. Just hang on one moment, and you can unmute yourself and go right ahead and ask your question.
All right, thank you. And it was actually would be directed towards Jerry Latham, if that's possible. Just wanted to get a little more clarification on the words she shared about staffing.
Okay, Jerry, do you want to go ahead with that?
Certainly. Go ahead, Sophie.
Okay, great, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure I kind of had a understanding of kind of what you were sharing there, because it sounded as if you're both hearing that there is exhaustion in the system, that people are having to work overtime, but also that you're actually getting people in to the Sunshine Coast. I'm assuming, healthcare workers from out of province, Lower Mainland. So is there any ways, just so I have a clearer picture of just kind of what staffing levels are like? Are those two things kind of balancing out, or are you still kind of needing more staff? Is there any quantification you can provide, just so I kind of have a better sense of that?
Certainly. I mean, we have always, and I would say continue to struggle in our vacancies in our, what we call our specialty areas, in our emergency, our critical care, and our labor and delivery. Because what we do is Sophie hire RNs without that specialty training, and then we put them into training courses and train them. So that's an ongoing aspect for our staffing challenges, and we're not unique. That is what you would find in most rural communities. So that's number one. The good news is we are recruiting. So we are recruiting. And I don't have numbers in front of me to tell you our vacancies versus our new hires. But we're maintaining our own. Our other area of staffing concern is our community health worker or our home care assistant, which is why we partnered with CAPU and with the Hospital Foundation to run a course. And I am pleased to say that 11 of our local residents took us up on that offer, where they are right now enrolled in CAPU doing the healthcare assistant course. So we have vacancies there, and we'll have those 11 new graduates come April 1st. But when I say that, we have 70 healthcare workers helping us on the coast. So it's a percentage of what we currently have. And hand in hand with that is, of course, the demand that is coming to us from our community, from our residents who do need assistance to remain in their homes as they age, whether it be a home support or whether it be a home care nurse. What we have found, and again, we're not unique, is that there are residents who would prefer to stay in their home and then even go into long-term care right now. And part of that is COVID and the lack of visitation and the fear of being in long-term care. So, Sophie, I'm rambling. So I'm not sure if that's helpful. So we have vacancies, but we're recruiting at the same time. And it's an ongoing exercise for us.
Okay, that's helpful. So no, major trends. No, people aren't flooding in and abandoning Edmonton.
Oh, I wish.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Sophie. Did you have anything else you'd like to ask at this time? Seeing as you're our only member outside of the board and staff and VCH here.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Well, we've adjourned, and thank you everyone for being here today, and we appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you on the next go around.
Continue to stay well.
Yes. Stay well, stay safe, and be kind.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.